and they're not implants, so what else can it be? Mm. Swami Yogananda, who believes in the reality of all things, which means he believes in the science of all things, and nothing spiritual can be unexplained, that it's all rooted in science, which is true. Sri Yukteswar elaborated on that. And he did some extensive traveling in the houses. Yeah. Like where we live here in the foothills of the Himalayas. So you can go into the Himalayas right here. He did extensive traveling, and then recently, in the past month or two, we went up to an ashrama, the Yoganandas that I'd never heard of before. It's some near the top of a mountain, very secluded, and it's an ashram dedicated to the formless God. So there's no images of Ramakrishna. There's no images of any perfect master. There's no images of any avatar. And he said, when you come to this ashram, it's all about the formless God. You want anybody to think of a God in human form as an avatar or perfect master. And you get that feeling when you go in there. Because we went into his room, we went into different rooms, and yeah, there's no murtis, there's no statues, and there's no paintings, there's no photographs. And you really get the feeling, in part because of the nature, because you have grand views of the mountains of God without form. That's right. I never experienced anything like it. Because all the temples you usually go, some of them are dedicated to God without form, but they have a Shiva lingam that represents the formless God. But here there was nothing to represent. There's nothing physical to represent the formless God. I thought it was a real actually, original message Marie and tell their list satsang bit. Marie Wilkins. Marie Wilkins. She just asked me if there was satsang. So this is where it's real important to have your own experience. Don't only listen to the experiences of Yogananda, and it's not going to do you very much good. You have to have your own experience. So it's good for your mind to listen to the stories of Yogananda and other masters, but it does nothing to your consciousness. Your consciousness only elevates from your experience, not from somebody else's. This brings me to another point. I hear descriptions of Kriya Yoga from all sources, because all sources of those people who practice Kriya Yoga come to me and ask me questions. So I get a wide representation of how Kriya Yoga is taught. Not in America, not just by Self-Realization Fellowship or Ananda, but worldwide, different organizations and people that break off from gurus and organizations and then start their own teaching, which is historical. All perfect masters, gurus, and avatars, disciples would legitimately break off from the group. And some of them would start teaching themselves. And after the guru passed on, which is, it's not a bad thing at all, because you want to speak from your own experience, and it gives a different voice to the experience, so different people can understand with different viewpoints. Not everybody can understand my viewpoint. I try to make it real clear, but it's still, I see that it's not understood very well. It's not my fault. It's not anybody's fault who's listening. It's just shows how extremely important it is to have your own experience and not just to rely on someone else. So I've been experimenting with AI just to ask it questions. And on everyday things that I think about. So I was just thinking, what will AI say about Kriya Yoga? I kind of had an idea, because if you go to Kindle and you look at any newly published book on Kriya Yoga, they all say the same thing, and all of it is inaccurate. There's not one single one that's accurate. They're all inaccurate because they're based on people's intellectual understanding of what other people have said about it. None of it, not one single one, is based on their own experience. There's a few who say that it is, but they're obviously fake. It's not true. Just by listening to what they say, it doesn't match with what the scriptures say. And you can always tell if something is true by match it with the scriptures, match it with the fairly modern scripture of Patanjali, even though it's thousands of years old, and Sri Yukteswar's book, Holy Science. And of course, the Gitas, the Upanishads. There's lots of Upanishads, but they're all authentic. They're all real, and so true experience is going to match with what the scripture said. Um, so this is an interesting thing. I'll go back to Kriya Yoga. But, Paramahansa Ramakrishna was an avatar. Devotees and disciples were gathered around him. He was not a formal traditional person at all. His brother was the priest of the Kali temple, which we've gone to. We really love, because that's where Kali manifested herself to Ramakrishna in his life. So when his brother died, they asked him, "Will you be the priest? Because you have to have your priest in the temple." And he said, "Yeah." But immediately he didn't follow the formalities of the priest that you're supposed to follow. He did. He acted as a priest at the Kali temple as a lover of Kali, not as this is what you do, and now this is what you do, and then now this is what you do. These are the rules. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what's expected. He threw all that out and just went on his own experience and his consciousness of Kali in his worship. And people hated it. People did not like it. They said that he was crazy. They said he was a lunatic. They said he should be fired. Ramakrishna didn't listen to anything. He wasn't going to change his own experience. It was impossible. So understand that almost everything in the world is not original. And not just Kriya Yoga or spirituality, but almost nothing is original. Almost everything is it's based on what other people have said in the past, distant past. If you like history, if you studied history, or anything that goes back in time, it's all based on what other people said. It's written down, or in the Indian spiritual tradition, a lot of it was um, in song instead of in writing. It was passed down in memorization song. So there's a tremendous amount of really, really good scriptures that tell you the truth about spirituality. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is very few people understand them. Even something as simple as the Bhagavad Gita, which is very simple. I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. I've seen the Mahatmas, some Mahatmas that I respect, and saying their commentaries. I've read Sri Yukteswar's commentary on the Gita. He didn't do the full Gita, he just did some chapters. Then I read Lahiri Mahasaya's commentary on the Gita. And then we have Yogananda's commentary, which unfortunately has been altered tremendously. So the true nature of his commentary has been darkened quite a bit. So we have nobody to really explain things to us accurately about spirituality. It's all about what somebody else said. So using Self-Realization Fellowship as an example, and you can use any organization as an example. You can use any spiritual teacher as an example in Kriya Yoga, and there's a lot of them. I don't know where they come from. There's almost none of them that teach the truth about it, simply because they don't know. The only way to know the truth about Kriya Yoga is from your own experience. But you can't have your own experience unless you're guided by a true guru. It's not possible. We're not super spiritual beings. We've incarnated into one of the darkest, lowest environments in creation, this physical world, where animals eat other animals to survive. Bugs eat other bugs to survive. Fish eat bugs. Everything is eating everything to survive. That's the world that we live in. It's not a friendly place. And then we live among the most treacherous of all animals, the human being. Of course, there's nice people, but when it really comes down to making a true choice of helping you in your darkest hour with everything that they have, how many are gonna make that choice to help you? No, not very many. So I've been fortunate to hear directly. I wasn't there. I'm not old enough, but I wasn't in Encinitas when Yogananda was. But I have spoken to some disciples of his. And it's interesting if you speak with various disciples of Yogananda, they all had a different experience. They didn't all have the same experience. I didn't know that until I started to speak with them. They all have a completely different experience. The techniques that they learned are different. The things that Yogananda said to them are different. The ways that he guided them are different. Their understanding is different. Every single one of them. And why shouldn't it be? Every human being is different. So why would an understanding be different? Even if we understand the same thing, even if we understand the one reality, our understanding is going to be different because we're different. It's not going to be the same as somebody else's, ever. So the ignorant try, because they don't understand this, they try to make every person believe the same thing. If you don't believe what I believe, then you're wrong. I'm right. Nobody else is right. Only I'm right. So if you don't believe Kriya Yoga the way I teach it, you're wrong. You have to believe it the way I tell you to believe. Now, that's unfortunately true. Here, I'm going to read you something from Ramakrishna. I think on pages at random, and I look at them. This is Paramahansa Ramakrishna. He would spontaneously go into nirvikalpa samadhi. This happens because he has no impurities. All of his vasanas, karmas have been destroyed. And it's easier for him to go into a pure state of consciousness than it is to live amongst the situations, to live in situations in the world, which are all relative and all corrupted to a certain extent. So even in samadhi, you came out of samadhi. And a devotee was witness to that. He said after a long time, Sri Ramakrishna regained consciousness of the world. So he would go into samadhi sometimes for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, sometimes for an hour. And then he saw the devotee, he started speaking with him. That was there. He said, this is just spontaneous. Something happens to me in that state of consciousness, referring to the consciousness that he was just in. So he's going to describe it. Now I feel ashamed of myself. In that state, I feel as if I were possessed by a spirit. Now, this is a description from an authentic experience. I cease to be my own self. While coming down from that state, I cannot count correctly. Trying to count, I say 1, 7, 8, or some such thing. That he's just being factual. Can you imagine counting, say, 1, 2, 7, 8? And the devotee says, it is because everything is one. And Ramakrishna says, no, it is beyond one. It is beyond two. Now, I know this to be true. Their reason withers away. God cannot be realized through scholarship. He is beyond the scriptures, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Tantras. So just in this brief little interaction, he points out so that it makes an impact. No, it isn't. It isn't because everything is one. How many times have you heard spiritual people say everything is one? They don't know what they're saying. They just heard it repeated, and then you hear it, and then you're in the right situation. You might say the same thing. Well, everything is one. No, it isn't. It's beyond. It's beyond one. For one to exist, there has to be two. So it isn't one. You can't say that it's one. In order to say it's one, there has to be two. That's as close to explaining it as I can explain it. So what does that say to you? It says it has to be your experience. So Kriya Yoga teachings, Kriya Yoga lessons are all trying to teach you something. Was Yogananda taught Kriya Yoga by Sri Yukteswar? Was an emphasis taught being on the teachings of Kriya Yoga? Did Sri Yukteswar ever say, these are my teachings? Did anybody ever say, these are the teachings of Sri Yukteswar? No, never. To imply that these are the teachings of Sri Yukteswar means that these are his, not someone else's. This is his unique take on God. No. Our gurus would never participate in such a stupid thing. But we see every day, based on the teachings of Yogananda. This Sunday sermon is based on the teachings of Yogananda. Well, why isn't it based on what you experience? You've been practicing Kriya Yoga for 30 years. Tell us what's based on your realization. Kriya Yoga is all about realization. So why don't you have it? If you had it, you would speak from your realization. Why would you speak on Yogananda's? This is what Yogananda wanted. Cannot anybody understand this? No, they can't. That's why it's impossible to make any meaningful progress in Kriya Yoga without a guru to guide you. Not to teach you, but to guide you. There's a big difference between teaching somebody and guiding somebody. Teaching, there's just information. That's the last thing you need. You don't need information. You've already got tons of information. What has information ever done for you? And now in this age, we're diluted with information. If you want to know about Kriya Yoga, you can ask anybody, anywhere, anytime. And you can read about it from anybody, anytime. So for fun, it just occurred to me with AI, why don't I ask AI, what is the Kriya Yoga of the God-realized masters today of Kriya Yoga? And who are the God-realized masters of Kriya Yoga? And what is Kriya Yoga based on their experience? And AI had a problem with that. It kind of AI usually gives you very direct answers that are based on its intellectual ability to shift through things that have substance and things that don't have substance. And it does it pretty remarkably. But with Kriya Yoga, it was terrible. So it gave me an answer, and immediately I saw the answer was wrong. So I'm just who I am. I'm not a smart person. I just barely got through school. And as an American, I barely got through school. I didn't go to school. I tried not to. Um, and I challenged Jim and I on what they said about Kriya Yoga. And Jim and I surprised me. He said, "You're right. I was wrong." Um, and like, thanks for enlightening me. Uh, you're right. You said what you're saying is based on experience and fact. What I was saying was just based on um, magic and superstition. So I recognize that most things about Kriya Yoga is based on uh, nothing very tangible. Uh, it's hard. It was hard for AI to come up with an example of a Kriya Yoga uh, God realized Kriya Yoga. We hear about Kriya Yoga masters. It's usually the people who propagate themselves, advertise themselves as a Kriya Yoga master. You usually don't hear it from somebody else from their experience. Um, and then AI gave me some more information. The second one, the question I had, it was obviously not true. It's very shallow, superficial answer, which is unusual for AI. And I challenged him on it, and he said, "Oh, you're correct again." And then the third one, I said, "Oh, but also correct on this, and you're correct on that." So AI, for what I can tell, bases its answers on uh, all the information out there about Kriya Yoga, and so even AI doesn't have the higher uh, take on Kriya Yoga, meaning the essence of Kriya Yoga. It relies much on superstition. And then I realized that it solidified for me, even though I realized it for a long time, that Kriya Yoga in the whole, and you can see this too. It's it's communicated a lot on almost superstition. I believe, or some magic in the air, some unseen magic that happens in Kriya Yoga. So one thing I challenged AI on was he said that Kriya Yoga initiation is a a transmission of energy. And I immediately said, no, it's not a transmission of energy. It's nothing to do with transmitting. It isn't uh, transmitting knowledge to you. The knowledge is already within you. How can a guru transmit knowledge to you? How can a guru transmit energy to you? The energy is already within you. And yet we're taught that it's a transmission. I see it in all the Kriya Yoga. Uh, you go to initiation and you expect the gurus to transmit through the initiator. And the initiator doesn't have to be a guru because the true guru is transmitting through the initiator who's in tune, supposedly, with the guru. You're not in tune with the guru, but this person who's been he's been a disciple of a guru that he's never met. He's attuned with that guru that he's never met somehow. Which I don't know how you can be in tune with something without touching it. And to have superstitions of what that is uh, would be extremely ignorant to think that any superstition, if a superstition has to be portrayed as the reality, and you know that the reality is absent from that person's experience, because Sri Yukteswar, every single thing he said was based on experience. He spoke from his realization and his experience. And the thing is, we're so stupid, we're so dense, even when we read, we're almost told what to understand. Even when we read the autobiography of Yogi, we're told by others what to believe. This isn't what Yogananda taught. It's not what the gurus taught. The way to do that. So even in the autobiography where Yogananda says that Lahiri Mahasaya was invited to some spiritual debates, which spiritual debates were popular in the earlier centuries. Ramakrishna was invited to a spiritual debate. And there were some scholars, pundits, that were really, really good at debating spiritual knowledge that comes from history and books and scriptures, because their intellects are real sharp and they can remember everything that they read and they can organize it into intellectually. So Lahiri Mahasaya was invited to one of these debates, who should be looked upon as the one who provided the world with Kriya Yoga. It wasn't Babaji. Babaji didn't want to do it. He had to convince Babaji to get permission to do it. So he was invited, and these great scholars gave their take on particular vague points in popular scriptures. What does this mean? And so the various scholars gave their take on what it meant. But you could tell they weren't entirely confident in what they were saying. And then so they asked Lahiri Mahasaya, "Sir, what do you say?" And what did he do? This is something that nobody else did. So he also was surrounded by ignorance everywhere you look. He said, "I will presently undergo those states of consciousness and tell you what I see, tell you what I perceive." What would you say to that? How can you argue with that? And then he went into that state of consciousness and he explained it perfectly so that everybody understood it. That had never understood it before. And that the scholars also understood it, because it came directly from his personal knowledge. So why, after 50 years, 60 years of Kriya Yoga practice among people that become members of an organization, which I don't know why they do. I guess it's a feeling of belonging, I guess. I was told that if you become a member of the organization, if you become a monk, then you have credibility. If you're not a member of the organization, and especially if you're not a celibate monk, then you don't have credibility. That goes against every scripture I've ever been exposed to. I've never seen that throughout history. We go into ancient times in India, and sages and saints, most of them were married. They definitely didn't go to organizations. There weren't any organizations. And in Swami Vivekananda's time in Calcutta, there was a Brahmo Samaj. It was a popular organization, like organizations are today. You go there, and there's a teacher of the organization that people gather and that have a similar interest. With Kriya Yoga, it isn't true. Paramahansa Yogananda never set it up that way. That was not his intention at all. Anybody that implies that everything comes from one external source, understand that it isn't true. They're not telling the truth. And not because they're trying to deceive you, it's because they don't know. Don't you know that an ignorant person will talk about all sorts of things that they don't know about? They've heard about them, but they don't know about them, but they'll talk about them. We see it every day about everything, every single subject. People will talk about politics or uh, all sorts of scientific discoveries. People that aren't experts in the field, and they'll talk about it. Or experts that don't understand. We'll take astronomy, for example. All the top scientists and experts have been proven wrong by the Webb telescope. All of their theories have been proven wrong. It's pretty shocking. My own example, because I've lived for into my 7th decade now, and I look back on my life, I was always wrong. Always. I was never right about anything. Anything physical or anything spiritual. I was wrong about every single thing. And I observed my family, I observed other people that I grew up with, and I observed that everybody's wrong about everything. We're ignorant people, especially when it comes to spirituality. You have to understand that everybody is ignorant. Don't listen to them. Research it yourself. Realize yourself. Experience yourself. Meditate yourself. It's not a group project. It's a singular activity of going within yourself. In order to explore and connect and realize, you have to exclude everything external, every single thing. So what does it matter if you're at a Sunday Kriya Yoga service or if you're in your basement closet? Is the energy of the Sunday service, is it just so tremendous that you can only have it there? And then the basement closet, there's no energy. The energy of the canned lentils, maybe. Or you hear people that go to different places and they say, well, it's undeniable there's a tremendous energy there. In some places there are, because there is energy at various places, but that's not an energy that you connect with in realization and in meditation. I've gone to certain temples, like the Jageshwar temple, right? There's no doubt a tremendous energy there. When I go there, that energy possesses me. It takes possession of me. I know what that energy is like. And some places I go to, and there's nothing notable. Um, but it would also be if, at least in the U.S. that I know, in baseball goes back centuries, and so there were certain stadiums like the Wrigley Stadium in Chicago, where baseball players in the former um, century top players were playing regularly for 5 nights a week, top stars. And it continued over decades and decades. So when you go into that stadium, I mean, you have the feeling of, when you feel an energy there. If you're a baseball fan, if you're not a baseball fan, then you just see an old building. Um, so the energy that you feel in places is totally in respect to uh, your own appreciation for where you are. Every temple I go into, it's a represent. I see it as a representation of a place to worship God. So I respect every place I go into. I go in with a feeling of respect. When I was in Dakshineswar, I would go into the 12 Shiva temples, the Kali temple, the Krishna Radha temple, and other people were there. Some were real devotees, but most were on holiday. They went as sightseers to see the ancient artifacts, to see the ancient place, to see the geometry, the architecture. Um, they didn't come as devotees. So those who came as devotees, which were in the minority, they would feel an energy. Those that came as um, uh, sightseers or on holiday, they would feel the energy of, oh, well, I'm not at work. I'm not in the city. This is a nice, calm, peaceful place. I enjoyed my time in there because it was peaceful and there were beautiful chants going on and worship in the temples and the Ganges, and it felt nice, just like going to a nice place. So understand that you can only make progress in Kriya Yoga the same way Yogananda made progress. It's not going to be a different way than it was for him. Do you really expect your Kriya Yoga progress to be in a different way than Yogananda's? Yogananda's was the same way as Sri Yukteswar's. Sri Yukteswar guided Yogananda. And Sri Yukteswar in the same way as Lahiri Mahasaya.
Is it going to go around your wrist twice? Just barely.
Yeah.
This is very easy, sweetie. Look.
Okay.
Look.
Lahiri Mahasaya guided Sri Yukteswar. So I've met lots and lots and lots of people. And lots of people who appear to be devotees because they do the things, the external actions that true devotees do. They mimic those actions. But in their heart and their mind, they're thinking worldly thoughts. True devotee isn't enamored with externals. They're not enamored with worldly thoughts. The only thought that they have is their guru, their gurus, and God. They completely disassociate mentally with all the things of the world because they know there's nothing substantive about it. Sure, I could love my job. I used to love my job. I was fortunate in that the work I did was things that I really, really loved to do. And I was excited to go to work every morning. And I had my own businesses, so I decided what I was going to do that day. So I enjoyed it, but I knew that it wasn't something that was meaningful and that I was creating something that's going to have any substance. It's just a place for me to express. Just like an artist expresses on a canvas is a place to express. Your work is a place to express your understanding, your knowledge, and your values, your honesty, and your ability to communicate. And then the same thing with your home life, and then the same thing with what is the most important thing to you. I mean, really, what is the most important thing to you? The real most important thing to you, not just a thought that you have, or what you wish it was. What is it actually? And then acknowledge that, and then face it. Say, I don't like what I'm giving so much attention to. I don't like wasting so much of my day. I don't like waking up with the wrong attitude and going to sleep with the wrong attitude. I don't like being frustrated, confused, the inability to express freely, being manipulated by other people, being told what to do by other people, being told what to believe by other people. And know that Kriya Yoga today is you're being told what to do by other people. If you don't do it like this, then you're not practicing Kriya Yoga. If you don't believe what I believe, you're not practicing Kriya Yoga. If you don't do it the way that I do it, the way that I believe it to be done, then you're wrong and I'm right. That has absolutely nothing to do with spirituality. That's not the basis for spirituality at all. And so why does this happen? It happens because where is the God-realized guru? Paramahansa Ramakrishna was God-realized and he was an avatar. He's gone. Lahiri Mahasaya, gone. Swami Sivananda, gone. Nandamaya Ma, gone. Ramana Maharishi, gone. All the people we read about, they're all gone. Where are the God realized? Well, you think with our supreme intelligence, which is not very intelligent, we think, well, it must be like Ramana Maharishi, or it must be like um, Ramakrishna. It must be really easy to find because so many people are talking about them now. Well, a lot of people respect Vincent van Gogh's paintings now, don't they? They're worth a lot of money. When he was painting them and he was trying to sell them, nobody would buy them. When he tried to give them away, nobody would take them. People just saw them as useless. They're the same paintings that are here right now. I've seen them in person that are worth 30, 40, $60 million. Why is that? It's the exact same painting. The ones that other people said are worthless. So there are perfect masters. I don't believe there's an avatar right now, but there are perfect masters. But they're not going to be inclined to be famous. Why would they want to be? They're not interested in propagation to the whole world because they know that the whole world doesn't want to realize God. They don't want it. Do you think everybody wants self-realization? Ask your family. You might practice Kriya Yoga. You might have a family member that does. Most of them, they're not interested in. Your relatives aren't, most of them aren't interested. Your people at work, they're not interested. People you see walking the streets, they're not interested. So why would a perfect master, a true perfect master, go out and travel from city to city throughout the world propagating God realization when nobody's interested? They're interested in other things. So you could include other things, entice them to be interested in God realization. Is that going to be productive? Is it something that if you just do it with no interest, then it's going to make such an impact on you that it's going to change your life, even without any interest? No. So Kriya Yoga is not powerful. Our masters never said it was powerful. The techniques are very simple. A child can practice the so-called secret techniques. There's nothing secret about them. There's no power behind them. If you practice a mantra, for example, if you practice some pranayamas, you can feel an increased amount of peace. But the fundamental problem is still there. Your impurities are still there. The way you think about things are still going to be there. That's why so many people who practice Kriya Yoga, they still have the unpleasant characteristics of a worldly person, even though they try to hide it in your presence. In private, they can have very, very unpleasant characteristics because there's no real change. So we have to understand that we need guidance. We can progress without guidance just by thinking more along spiritual lines, thinking about God, practicing some meditation, doing a weekly or a daily time of worship of God. These things we can progress, slowly evolutionary. Through the mechanical process of Kriya Pranayama, you can speed that up a little bit. But it's not substantial because your concentration is not substantial. That requires concentration. Very few people have that type of concentration. So somebody with exceptional concentration, they could make some progress in spiritually by practicing Kriya Pranayama mechanically. But very few people have the ability to concentrate very long. Very few people have the ability to sit even to sit for very long. If you can't sit for very long, how are you going to concentrate for very long? It's not going to happen. So we need guidance. The majority of people have so much self worth of their own material existence that they think they're very, very substantive. They think very highly of themselves. and they're not going to be taught by anybody, and they never will be, because they don't have an attitude to learn and to experience. They already know everything about everything. I just watched a short little video today, and it's a true video. It's fairly new. It's in 2022, and it was climate of Mount Everest. If you have enough money, you can climb Mount Everest. You hire some really good Sherpas, and the queue up to Mount Everest can be really crowded now, because a lot of people want to say, I climbed Mount Everest. And so if you have a lot of money and you have the Sherpas, you can climb Mount Everest. So the true story is about this man. He was a very wealthy, well-known figure on Wall Street, and he was the man. He was the boss. That's how you approach work. You know, I'm smarter than everybody. I'm more knowledgeable than everybody. And with my sheer determination and will, I will make this deal happen, and I will make this money, and I have made this money. And so I feel very highly gratified with my superior abilities. So he thought it'd be a great idea to climb Mount Everest, and you could hang that up with his other accomplishments. And unfortunately, he invited his wife and his daughter. They had never climbed before. They'd never climbed before. They're going to climb Mount Everest. He had never climbed before. He was very overweight. He was like over 250 pounds. None of them were in shape, but he was determined that he could climb Mount Everest, and he hired the best Sherpas. So it's a long, interesting story. But I've never climbed Mount Everest, but I have lived at very high altitudes, not that high, it was 16,000 feet. So you have to get climatized to that thin air. In Mount Everest, of course, it requires a lot to be acclimatized. It takes a while. You have to climb up to a certain point, but then you have to go down for your body to adjust. And then you climb up a little further and you go down. It takes a while. Well, he kept telling the Sherpas, hurry up, I can do it. There's a crevice, or there's a ladder. Just the ladder is put across the crevice between the snow. And you're supposed to hook yourself up to a safety line. And he was in a hurry, so he just sprinted across it without a safety line, and expected his wife and his daughter to do the same. So, to keep the story short, his daughter died. There was no horrible death. She started bleeding from the inside, and then it comes on very quickly. Even though the Sherpa said she has to go down, he said no. And then shortly after that, his wife died. And the Sherpas got word, your wife has died. And he did this. I'm going to make it to the top. This is how people are to different degrees. How is that kind of person going to approach a guru for guidance in self-realization or God realization? And we all have attitudes like this to a certain degree. Even people who appear to be humble, they're holding on to their sense of self-worth. Some people have a self-worth in the sense of, I'm humble. That's what I identify with. I'm humble. That's what I am. And they take that on as an identity. So it's very, very tricky. So you can make progress spiritually. If you're not that interested in God and God realization, it's better than having no ideal at all. At least you have an ideal, a spiritual ideal. But if you're really, really hungry for God realization, if you're one among the many, 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 and you might be that one, you can become God realized. You can easily become self-realized, but then you can become God realized. You have to be self-realized before you can become God realized. There's a common question that people ask. What's the difference between self-realization and God realization and liberation? Very simple answer. Very few people know, especially in Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga is about liberation, God realization, and self-realization. You think that a Kriya Yogi would know this. But who do they have to teach them this? Yogananda is gone. Yogananda is not a spirit living in the ether. He said that he's coming back. He said, I'm going to live with Lahiri Mahasaya in Sri Akshaswara in a particular place for some time. So he's still incarnated in an astral body or a causal body. He's not aware of all your thoughts. He's not aware of what you're doing. This is a belief that people have told you to believe, to no effect, to no good effect. It's just stimulation for your mind to think of thoughts and to dream the things that are in the realm of imagination, instead of using your mind and your concentration for delving inward for your own realization. You keep pointing to the wrong things. If they would just point to the right thing, but they don't, because they don't know. James Lynn, who took over the organization, as Yogananda told him to after his death, he was a man of God realization. He was in a high state of consciousness all the time, like Ramakrishna I described to you. And if you ever, there are recorded talks of him giving satsang. You should listen to it sometime. He wasn't a great orator in satsang about various subjects. So, but he he only talked about his experience. It was all, the word he used the most often was consciousness, consciousness, consciousness. Now, what does that mean to you? It means that through Kriya Yoga, you go into a higher state of consciousness. And he said this, you go into a higher state of consciousness. So Kriya Yogis today, all the Kriya Yogis, are they going into a higher state of consciousness? If they're not going into a higher state of consciousness, then they're following the wrong path. The path is a path of consciousness, not of activities. God doesn't care what your activities are. He doesn't care what you do on Sundays. He doesn't care what you do on Wednesdays. He doesn't care if you go to satsang or not. He doesn't care if you meditate or not. He doesn't care if you're vegetarian or not. He doesn't care. God doesn't put any value into the spectacle, the movie of nothing, which is what this world is. It's nothing. And the gurus, the avatars, come to teach you it's nothing. It's a mirage. Don't put your attention on the activities of Kriya Yoga and the music of Kriya Yoga and the sightseeing of Kriya Yoga. Put all your attention inwardly on your own reality, on your own self, your own true self. Put your attention there. Experience it. Focus on it. Fall in love with it. When you fall in love with it, then you immediately travel great, great distances in consciousness with no effort whatsoever. Just like when you're in love, there's no effort in being in deeper love. If you've ever been in love before, you're in love. You're not trying to be in deeper love. People who are trying to be in deeper love are ones who aren't in love. So very few are in love with God. Some people are. You don't have to be highly experienced to be in love with God. You have no idea what your life was before. Your life could have been an extremely good life spiritually, so that you're born with a natural tendency towards consciousness and towards a love with God. So you're not especially interested in all the spiritual activities, but you feel a longing to be whole. You feel a longing to be free. You have a longing for something that isn't here in the world. That's all true spiritual longing. That's real love for God. You remember, God isn't a thing. God is formless. Just like the ashram of Yogananda we went to in the Himalayas. And then satsang is transforming. And you're listening to somebody, not a public speaker, but you're listening to somebody who's talking about their experience. I get the emails. Again, I'm just using them for. I like self-realization fellowship, but not I criticize them. I don't. I just use them as example. Maybe that's why they're there, so they can be used as an example. And what the spiritual talk is this weekend, and the spiritual talk is based on the teachings of Yogananda. That isn't satsang. Satsang comes from your experience, not somebody else's experience. And you could say, well, I'm opening myself up to the spirit of Yogananda to be used as an instrument. Well, sorry, he's not going to be able to use you as an instrument if you have your own ego, if you have your own mind cluttered with thoughts and ideas that aren't true. How can he use you as an instrument? It'd be like, okay, let's say in India, someone was eat without a utensil. So your hand is utensil. And you go to mix the curry and the rice, and your hand's not cooperating. Your hand is able to. It's able to mix the rice and the curry, and it's able to bring it up to your mouth. So finally, you're able to get some rice, and you bring it up, and you try and get it to your mouth. Your hand does other ideas. So you can't represent a God-realized guru unless you yourself have a pure state of consciousness, like James Len did. James Len represented Yogananda. Well, what happened? You hear about James Len in the history books? Is self-realization fellowship based on James Len? You hardly ever hear about him. He was the essence of Yogananda's Kriya Yoga. Not all the activities. Better understanding of James Len would be a tremendous benefit for Kriya Yogis. So that's my talk for the day. I didn't want to talk too much to give us some time to interact and talk. Tomorrow we're having Kriya Yoga initiation for one person. And those who have been initiated before, not just by me, but any Kriya Yoga initiation, is welcome to attend to go over the techniques of Kriya Yoga. And the techniques of Kriya Yoga are not secret. You're not being told to keep the techniques secret. They can all be found in the scriptures, every single one of them. So how can you keep a secret of something that's already out there in the open? In a book, of course, somebody would have to find the book, but anybody could if they made the effort. So the techniques we're never told the techniques are secret. Lahiri Mahasaya never said they're secret. He said to keep one secret. And his secret was never tell anybody that I'm your guru. He didn't say never tell anybody the techniques. He said, don't tell anybody that I'm your guru. Why don't we follow that practice now? Well, it'd be extremely hard to keep an organization running if you follow that. If you followed what Lahiri Mahasaya said about gurus, wouldn't it? Personally, I'm never going to see it happen, but personally, I think it would be fantastic. Less and less emphasis on Yogananda, less and less emphasis on Babaji. But Babaji is avatar. Yogananda and our gurus are perfect masters, but we don't need to encourage them to help anybody. You're only going to be able to help those who are ask for help. And if they truly ask for help, they do it by going deep within themselves and quieting their mind, quieting their body, and then becoming fit to listen for any guidance that comes. You can't take any guidance from supreme beings if your mind is chattering to you at the same time. Sometimes, wow, I'm at the dinner table and I'm eating, and somebody here is talking to me. They're telling me something, and I'm trying to listen, but somebody over here is talking to somebody else about something, and I'm trying to understand what they're saying. And I hear what they're saying. But I don't make out anything because there's just too much noise. So I don't hear what anybody has to say. And that's what happens if you try to tune in with the guru, which I think is the what they talk about. That's what the talk is about this Sunday. Is how to tune in with a guru. Well, my answer would be, just like I confront AI, would be, first, I would have to know the guru. Wouldn't I? Be able to tune in to the guru. That would be number one. How can I tune in with the guru if I don't know the guru? And not what my mind tells me. Do we know Paramahansa Yogananda? I went through the same thing. I never met him in person. So I picked up the autobiography of a yogi in a bookstore, and I read that. And I was extremely attracted to Paramahansa Yogananda. And over the years, I read every single book that came out about him, every single one, multiple times, and then spoke to disciples of his, had their take on your experience. And every one of them had a different experience. So how well do I know Yogananda? I would never tell you that I know Yogananda. Um, if he were to walk in the door, he'd come in and still look like he did in his physical body, I would recognize him. And you can look at him, and then I would look at this and see, oh, Paramahansa Yogananda. Is that what our facts are based on? On our eye, it can deceive us about everything. You can make latex masks now. If somebody decided to do it, they can make a perfect replica of Paramahansa Yogananda as a person in disguise. Suppose that person walked into a get-together at Kriya Yogis. It would start quite a sensation. So, do we know the guru? The guru isn't the physical body. The guru tells us he's not the physical body. So why do we continue to think he's the physical body? So then the mind says, well, he's the spirit. So our mind, our idea, our intelligence tells us, well, the spirit is everywhere. So the spirit comes through anything external. So the bird might be the guru. The bird might be Babaji. I've heard people say that. That crow might be Babaji. Everything they're pointing to is external things that don't exist. It's extremely ignorant. The only way to know is in your heart. But what does that mean? That's not vague. It means in the heart of yourself, in the heart of your existence. So to be in tune with the guru means to be in tune with yourself. Not that you're the guru, but if you want to be in tune with Yogananda, be in tune with yourself. That's where you'll need Yogananda. And if you're truly devoted to Yogananda, I understand that you can be devoted to a certain guru. It could be devoted to Ma Kali, for example. You can put the emphasis on the divinity of Ma Kali, the divinity of Yogananda, so that you could actually meet the real person, the real God, the real goddess, the real guru. But first, you would have to be pure yourself in order to have that meeting. And that goes by contacting your real self and then merging with your real self. There's nothing to do with thought. imagination, desire, any of these things pointed to anything external. And it certainly is an imagination. And it's not somebody else's imagination. And how do you realize your old self? It's very easy. A true guru can teach you how to do it right now. Only takes 5 minutes. Can you do it in 5 minutes? You can. I can show you how. Okay, so we'll have questions. Van Nevin, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I want to ask you describe who is God who want to God relation, who not, and like that. And then comes the ask in myself to ask how I know I want truly self realization and God realization. How I know I want that true. Maybe I thought I want that because you said about that, you know.
And liberation.
And liberation, yes. Today I have a friend. His name is Nama.
Mm-hmm.
He's with me. It was spontaneous. He's also hearing you.
Okay, great. I'm glad you invited him. It's a good question. I'll tell you based on my experience, because that's what I can really communicate authentically. I knew from as far back as I can remember. And I can remember way back. I remember back when I was wearing diapers. I remember that I loved God. And I wasn't able to think about it intellectually as a 3-year-old or as a 4-year-old. But I knew that I loved God. I didn't have a name for God. Pretty soon after you're born, and you can start understanding languages. You start to hear about God from different sources. Even your parents probably tell you to pray to God. You might have a question. They say, "Well, pray to God. God is everywhere." So most people hear about God, and so my love for God deepened as I just heard about God in language for the first time. That deepened my love for God, but I had the love for God before that. So when you're born with the love for God or with love for the world. And for most people, it's a mixture of two. For most people, it's a love for the world. It's not a love for God. But those that do have the love for God, for most people, it's a mixture of the two. They love God, but they also love the world. And so that's the path of realization. As you walk the path of the realization, as you realize that not this, not this, not this, not that. So you go through worldly experiences, and you're disheartened, or you're confused by certain things, or you find out that they're not true. You believed in somebody, or you believed in something, then you find out that it's not true. So you learn from experiences. This isn't true. This isn't true. This isn't true. As your soul develops through lifetimes, you come to a lifetime where your consciousness is elevated to a certain point that you're born with a higher state of consciousness to where you just feel a love for God. It would be, which I believe this is true. Let's say you have a real deep love relationship with a person, and you spend all your time together, and you do everything together, and you truly are devoted to each other, and you love each other, and then one of you, your karma is up, and you leave the body. Well, you still have all that experience with that person. So I think if you were both to reincarnate at the same time, there would be a natural, you could put 10 people in front of you and you would have a natural feeling for that person based on your past experience. Even though it's not in our conscious mind, I believe that's true. I've experienced that. I think most of you would agree with that. So the same thing with God. So every one of us is born in a different state of consciousness based on our past experiences. So a guru can see pretty clearly if a person truly loves God or not. It might be helpful to somebody to be told that they do have true love for God. I can see how that would be beneficial if they were to find a true guru who could see that about them. I never had a guru that told me that. I never needed to be told that. I know myself. I didn't need to be told. This is how you can tell. So, and now finally I'm getting to your question. What do you think about the most during the course of the day? Whatever you think about the most is what you love. A lot of people, you tell me when they're eating breakfast, they're thinking about lunch. When they're eating lunch, they're thinking about dinner. When they're eating dinner, they're thinking about the dessert later in the evening. And then when they have that dessert, they're thinking about what they're going to have for breakfast tomorrow. There's people like that. A lot of people like that. They're in love with food. Look at the body weight epidemic. Not so much in India. It's become much more in India than when I first lived here. But definitely in Western cultures, majority of people are extremely obese. It's because they think about food. And now there's a popular Manjura, I think it is, diabetes drug that if you take it, you will lose weight, regardless of your desire for food or not. So people will still continue to think about food, but their body doesn't want the food. They don't have the common human sense and ability to stop eating when they should. That's because they're so in love with food and the world, they become an unnatural person. So that's the case with most people who live in the world. And then we see some exceptional spiritual giants that see that the world is illusion. It's hard to make out these people because they behave just like we do. This is another fallacy in Kriya Yoga. You think that a God-realized person is going to behave differently than you. They're not going to necessarily behave different than you. There's a lot of people who will behave different than you are. Spiritual people. It doesn't mean they're God-realized. So God realization is a state of consciousness. It doesn't necessarily change your activities. But you will know the state of consciousness you're in. But you might not know that my state of consciousness is God realization. And this is the problem, but trying to learn about God realization from people who don't know. They'll say, well, of course you'll know. Well, what is it that knows about things? What is it that knows about things or the mind? People operate from their mind. My mind knows this. You can have God realization and not know it. Your mind won't necessarily recognize it. This is all through the Gospel of Ramakrishna. He didn't recognize most things that he was experiencing. Very little, actually. He would sit in his room with some of his disciples, and instead of having satsang the way we do it formally, they would talk about God, and they would talk about the scriptures. And somebody would have a particular Upanishad, and they would open it up, and they would say, sir, the saint in this Upanishad is describing one of your experiences. Ramakrishna would be real eager. Let me hear it, because he wanted to learn about his own experience. And then would read it, and then he'd say, that's what my experience is. So it's the conscious mind that knows about stuff. Spiritual realization doesn't mean that you know about stuff. Ramakrishna said that he couldn't even count from 1 to 10. So there's ways you can know if you love God. If you're continuing to go to satsang, not a talk, but to satsang, if you continue to go, not even necessarily knowing why you do. That's because you love God. Because that's what is presented here. That's what's discussed. A lot of other satsangs, God isn't necessarily discussed. They talk about all sorts of things. I've heard there's, I guess you call him a yogi in Rishikesh, who teaches a lot of people. And he talks about love. Everything is love. Love this, love that. Improving your physical health, improving your financial health, improving your ability to feel happy and blessed, and your ability to love everybody and to be loved, these sorts of things, not God realization. Sri Aksaswara spoke about God realization. Yogananda spoke about God realization. Babaji spoke about God realization. Lahiri Mahasaya spoke about God realization. Manavai Rishi, Nanavai Ma, famous saints that people know, spoke about God realization. Since as far back as I can remember, giving satsang, I spoke only about God realization. I don't speak about anything else. That sounds interesting. I might be interested in certain material things. My conscious mind is interested in them. And my vasanas are interested in them. Poses no danger to me. I enjoy certain things in the world more so than somebody else because I'm interested in it. I'll just use one example. I like watches. I've always liked watches. I don't know why. As far back as I can remember, I always had a nice watch. Then through the years, I became more and more sophisticated in watches and watchmaking, watch repairing, different manufacturers of watches. And I started purchasing better and better and better watches until I eventually started purchasing the most expensive watches. And I still love watches today. I sold all of my real expensive Rolexes. I don't have them now. It'd be kind of ridiculous. But back then I really enjoyed them, but I'm still extremely knowledgeable about them. And I like talking about them. But it's based on my vasanas in my mind, not based on my heart. I suppose there's no trouble to me in my spiritual consciousness. So we can have all sorts of interest in the world, but our love can be only with God. It's very possible. So that's why when I initiate the way I guide you, I don't tell you to give up anything that you like to do. I encourage you to do more of it and become better at it and to get more experience of it, to really fulfill your desire of it. This is what I did with every one of my desires. And I took it to its absolute limit of experience and attainment. And then I was satisfied. And then I no longer thought about it ever again. Because I was fully satisfied with it. Any more questions?
Hello, my name is Naman, and I would like to know. We learn a certain type of Kriya technique. It's also called very secret from the North Himalaya, and I would like to know if this type of technique if it's effective in terms of purification and getting illuminated, or isn't in generally, or doesn't matter, doesn't be effective because it's a so-called secret and it's not open knowledge for everybody. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a complete total fallacy that there's some secret technique that gives self-realization. First of all, it's ridiculous. It's not true. Over the years, I've learned hundreds of different kriyas. Kriyas just means action, means a particular technique, practice. So every meditation practice, every mudra, everything could be called a kriya. So let's just take Kriya Yoga, all the different kriyas in Kriya Yoga. There's some basic kriya techniques, and there's some very advanced kriya techniques. You would think, well, advanced is better, right? Beginning technique is good if you're a beginner, but you'll eventually have to go and practice the advanced technique because that's going to be better. That isn't true. In order to practice advanced technique, you have to know how to become breathless in meditation. Now, breathless isn't holding your breath. Breathless is a natural happening of your breath becoming more and more subtle spiritually, not physically, but more and more subtle spiritually. And it happens at the katasa, it happens here. So you start breathing through the spiritual eye. It's the best way I can describe it. But it's not breathing in and breathing out. It's just one point at the Agana chakra. And within the Agana chakra, the katasa, that's the spiritual place of the primordial vibration of Om. So you're meditating in Om. And through meditation on Om, you become breathless. And then there's some very advanced Kriya techniques you can practice that only in the breathless state. So the person who can't go into the breathless state spiritually can't practice those techniques. And those techniques are good techniques, but the point is, are they necessary? No, they're not necessary. They could be interesting for a yogi who has lots of time to meditate and is in a situation of life where they don't have a job, they don't have a family, and they can meditate as much as they want during the day and the night, which is the case with me. So I meditated day and night. But even then, the techniques aren't necessary. If God is within us, and if God is closer to us than anything else, which is true, we don't need to follow a long, convoluted path of techniques to get to God. We can go directly to God. So there's no difficult technique to be practiced. So some Kriya techniques are complicated. I could describe the most complicated one, and you could understand it, but you would see it as complicated, especially in light of if you're doing it while not breathing. But the very basic techniques, it's really all that you have to do. There's really only one technique you have to do that has to be done for pratyahara. And pratyahara is the actual removal of all your prana from your senses and into the sushumna. Actually removing the energy connection with the world, just like a tortoise bringing its limbs into its shell. You take all your sense observations into the shell, into the sushumna, and then it elevates of its own and goes up into the agana, it goes up into sahasrara. So that's the method of a yogi, but there's also a method of a bhakti yogi. You don't have to follow the method of Kriya Yoga. You can follow the method of bhakti yoga. And bhakti yoga is love for God. There's nothing that you practice to experience the love of God. Now, some will say, well, you sing bhajans and you do this. No, it's nothing that you do. It's a natural upheaval of, I'm done with the world, I'm through with the world, I've experienced it, I understand it, and I don't want it. It's not a place of satisfaction for me, and I'm truly finished with it. And I just want to go home. I want to go to God. But it has to be a real abandonment of the world. Ramakrishna wanted to see Divine Mother, and Divine Mother would present herself to him. And he was an avatar. It wasn't until he got to such a point of despair, of loving her and wanting to be with her, that he actually picked up a sword in the temple. Remember, he's the priest of the Kali temple. He picked up a sword. When you go into the Kali temple, you can see the sword there. And he picked it up with the intention of killing himself. How many of you would do that? Ramakrishna did it spontaneously, and he was going to kill himself. He would have been dead. Right as he was about to pierce it through his chest, Divine Mother appeared to him. And then he fell down unconscious. Now, that's an exceptional soul. That's an avatar. We can also have love for God, the same love. It might not be powerful like that, but it can still, because it is love. It doesn't have to be powerful. It just has to be love. God recognizes the love in a little sparrow, and he recognizes the love in a saint. He recognizes the love that I see out the window. We have wild peacocks that have little babies. I see the love between the mother and the babies. And we have wild boars. I especially like to watch them because you see the love between all the little piglets and their mother and their father. And I see the little bird that's making the nest up here, and then has little eggs and devotedly sits on the eggs, and then hatches, and then teaches the little birds how to feed themselves. First of all, she feeds them, but my father feeds them, and then teaches them how to feed themselves. That's also love. So love isn't difficult. The problem is it diluted by love for other things? Is it love for God, or is it love also for all the things of the world? So human beings mostly love the world. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. And very few love God. But the ones that love God don't have very many venues for being taught the truth. Religion, in its essence, has the truth, but religion isn't taught. The truth isn't taught in religions. Christ isn't taught in Christianity. Ideas about Christ is taught in Christianity, which Christ isn't taught. In the Hindu temples, the Krishna temples, there's the worship of Krishna. And while people are worshiping Krishna, their mind is also thinking about their children's exam, their lawsuit, and all different things of the world. Their grandfather being in the hospital, all of these different things. You're concerned about all these different things. Whereas love is, you're concerned with one thing so much. It's like human love for another person. Romantic love. You love that one person so much. Everything else is excluded. Nothing else matters but being with that one person. It's similar to that. And so if you have that love, this is another good question that you asked. Well, how do I know if I love God? Here's another way if you love God or not. You really look forward to meditation. When you look forward to it, nothing's going to come between you and your meditation. When you go to sleep at night, you're thinking about meditating in the morning. You've already got it planned out. What time you're going to wake up, what time you're going to meditate. And you're not thinking about anything else. That's what you want to do. That's what you are going to do. That's because you have love for God. Because in meditation, you're in contact with God. It'd be like again, let's say I'm in love with a girl, and I can't be with her, and I can contact her on the telephone. But she lives in another time zone, and so we arrange a time to meet. Say, well, in my time zone, we'll meet at 4:30 in the morning. Am I going to forgive? about calling her at 4:30 in the morning? Am I going to go to bed that night distracted by some worry or problem that I'll forget about calling her at 4:30 in the morning? Am I going to check all my clocks to make sure all my clocks are set to the right time? Of course you will. You're going to make sure that all your clocks are working so you'll know the right time? Yes. And all this is true. Nothing's going to come between you and that phone call. I remember one phone call I made with somebody that I loved. I was, it's the middle of the winter. I was in Denver, Colorado. I was living in Miami, Florida at the time. And I flew to Denver, Colorado. I was working a job, doing artwork for a magazine. And the girl that I loved, we agreed all the time to call. Back then, the only phone you had was a payphone. There weren't any cell phones. I didn't have any money for a payphone. I didn't have a jacket because I was in Miami. The flight to Denver, I never was able to buy a jacket, so I didn't have a coat. It was below freezing. It was snowing, heavy snow. So the time comes up. I ask somebody if I can borrow 25 cents. And I give me 25 cents. And I said, you know where the nearest payphone is? And they point out the window down on the street. On the corner, there's a payphone, but it's snowing. So to make sure that I called her at the right time, I went out in the snow with no shoes. I didn't take time to put my shoes on. I was barefoot, and I didn't have on a coat. And I remember calling her. And I was so, is she going to pick up? Is she going to pick up? Is she going to pick up? Now that's called being in love. Now, the question was, how do I know if I love God? You do the exact same thing with satsang, and you do the exact same thing with your meditation. I know because I did that. I was put in a situation where I was young. I was only 16, so I had no involvement with the world. I wasn't attached to my mother and father. I was living on the Ganges in the Himalayas. I had no possessions other than a blanket and a dhoti and a t-shirt. And I was with Mahatmas. I was with perfect masters. All I did was attend satsang, and I meditated for 12 to 14 hours a day with concentration because that's what I wanted to do. And I did that every day. And in some of the ashrams, there was satsang, and the ashrams on the banks of the Ganges. It was always at a certain time. It was usually 7:30 at night. I was always the first one there. And there were Mahatmas living there, renunciant Mahatmas. I was also renunciant, not formally. I was always the first one there before any other Mahatma. Now, the satsang's there, 7:30. The guru's there that gave satsang. If you came at 7:31, you weren't allowed to attend. It's because you have no respect for satsang. The guru said, go away. No, you have no respect for satsang. If you have no respect for it, it's of no value to you. So if you're a minute late, no, you're not allowed. And if you think about it, that would be entirely true, wouldn't it? But suppose I made that phone call at 30 minutes after I said I would. She would say to herself, he's not really that interested in me. He didn't call me on time. He didn't call me early. He called me late. At least he called me. And then you make arrangements for the next day, and I don't make the phone call at all. And then what would she think? She said, well, he's not true. He's not in love with me. God does the same thing. God, throughout all the scriptures, we've heard firsthand that God protects his devotees. I just told you what a devotee is. God does protect his devotees. His devotees have nothing to fear from anything. Literally, I'm not afraid of anything. I've never been afraid of anything. A lot of difficult things have happened to me. Have never minded.
Anker.
A lot of people put value on friendships, and I'll just briefly touch on some subjects. Most of us put value on friendships, that we accumulate real good friends throughout life, people we can count on. And that's considered a good life if you have good friendships. I never had friendships. Ever. And there's not one single person I was there was my friend. Definitely not my best friend, because I didn't associate with people. I didn't want to. It came between me and my meditation. Why would I want to? I never went to parties. I never went out to dinner. I never dated. I never went to the movies. I never went on vacation. I never studied at school. All I did was meditate on God and read about God in the ancient scriptures. That's all I was interested in. And listening about God from the Mahatmas. That's all that was interesting. And so the realization, because I had Mahatmas, I had gurus to guide me, and I had initiation. I was shown what to do. I did it. So going back to your question about techniques, it doesn't matter what technique you practice. What matters is that you have a guru to tell you what technique to practice. That's the power. But it's incomplete power because you have to practice it. You're in the driver's seat. Guru has no Shakti, no power to magnetize your spine. None of that. All that's a bunch of hooey. You're in the driver's seat. It's what you want is what's going to happen. So you have to want it, but you also have to be patient. Fortunately, I was born with patience, incredible patience. It doesn't have to happen for me today. I never had the attitude it has to happen today. After I had instruction from a guru, before that, yeah. And after instruction from a guru, all that matters is that I follow the instruction and then the results. I'm doing my part. And whatever God is willing to give me, that's up to him. So I was happy. And then realization came at the appropriate time. And came at the right time. So the purpose of the techniques is for pratyahara. That's the sole purpose. No other reason. There's no technique that'll give you self-realization. There's no technique that'll give you God realization. It's ridiculous if you think about it. A physical technique with your hand or a physical breath, the way you do a breath or the visualization, that's going to conjure up, influence God to reveal himself to you. No. God only reveals himself to his true devotees. His true devotees are those that involve God. Not the ones that do things, but the ones that have that love that come from their being. So the techniques that your guru teaches you, those are to be applied 100%. Those have power because you apply them. They have power because your guru gave them to you, not to somebody else, but to you. suppose I want to dig a hole, because there's something valuable, and I tell my guru, there's something valuable in my backyard. I'm going to dig it up, and he gives me a shovel. Then I go back and I start digging and digging and digging and digging. And then I strike the treasure, something of real value. And then others want to know, how do I dig up something of real value? And they say, well, you get a shovel, and then you dig in the appropriate place. Is that going to work? The guru doesn't say that, because the guru gives you a shovel and then tells you where to dig. And the spiritual teacher will tell you, get a shovel, and then you start digging, and hopefully maybe you'll hit something. So the best books to read are the ancient books, the Gitas, the Upanishads, everything that Shankaracharya taught. Shankaracharya taught really, really well and easily way to understand. Gita is very direct. But understand that when you read these scriptures, it's not with perfect understanding. It's just for association. It's just for association with the fact that a saint was influential in the scripture coming about. Not for the fact that you're going to understand something. Some say, well, read the sutras very slowly and contemplatively and search for the meaning of what's in the sutra. What they're really telling you is how to read properly, not to read fast to the extent that you're just looking at the superficial meaning of the words they're being used. Look a little bit deeper and what do I think was meant by that in the choice of these words? Because different words have different meanings to different people. The scriptures aren't going to reveal anything to you. It's only after realization that you'll understand the scriptures. Because then you'll say, "Oh, I know that. I recognize that. I knew that. I recognize that." But you would have to have the realization first. Scripture's not going to give it to you. Any more questions? Yes, Chris.
I love the last thing you said about reading the Gita or the Yoga Sutra, and the text starts to make sense after the experience for me has happened. That's why going through them many different times, one, the text always meets me right where I'm at, and it provides confirmation of the truth, because each time I go through them, the realization points back to the truth of the scripture.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Well, you're a real sincere truth seeker. So as soon as that sincerity is present, you start to have realization, and understanding starts to come, and then eventually you'll have complete realization. So that's the it isn't that you become so big that you understand the the largeness of everything. You become so small. Your ego becomes so small that you understand the smallest of things, and that's where God exists. He exists in the smallest of places, and then in the expansion of creation, He exists in the biggest of places, which is the infinite universe. But He's present in the smallest of places, and if we're projecting ourselves as being in this and this and this and that, we can't go into this small place. We're trying to bring in all of our attachments, all of our possessions into that small place.
Yeah. And when those realizations happen, the beauty of the simplicity always hits me.
Yeah,
It's just like, oh, wow.
I agree. That's what's always surprising about it, isn't it? Is how incredibly simple it is. That it's present in everything.
Yeah.
Because we live here in nature. There's a lot of it. We see it in the animals, the birds, and all the exotic animals, all the cows, and peacocks, and there's tigers here, and elephants, and monkeys, and wild boars, and bugs, and wasps, and flies, and you see the presence of God in all of those. You see their characteristics and their natures are all given to them by God, but they're all operating with that same energy. And when you see that, that's simple. It's a simple realization. That's the realization that God is present in everything. And self-realization is the realization that God is present in me. So I'm going to go deep into God. I'm going to go deep into my presence, and there I'll find God. And as I go deeper and deeper into God, then I realize the presence of God
Everywhere.
So you have self-realization and then God realization. And then liberation is having, I personally don't have any conscious desire for liberation. Liberation is becoming one with God. I would, my druthers, I would prefer just to exist as God's devotee, so that I can worship the power of that beauty. Ramakrishna said, I don't want to be sugar. I want to taste sugar. That's exactly the way I feel. I don't feel any desire to accomplish anything. I have everything right now. There's nothing that I want to accomplish.
Yeah, the recognition of the simplicity seems to keep pointing back to the mind as an instrument for complexity. And what it feels to me like the liberation is just the freedom from the activity of the mind, wanting this, wanting that, and then it's just more of a pure state of of just being an expression of the infinite.
Yeah, that's not liberation. That's realization, or it's just simply successful yogic practice to be able to stop the mind. If you can stop the mind, then you're free of all thoughts. You're free of all vasanas. You're free of all karma. If you stop the mind, because karma only operates through the active mind, so you're free of all of that. But you're still present. Whereas liberation, you're no longer present. You no longer exist. You're no longer a separate entity. Some say, well, I don't want to think about that I want liberation, that I don't want to think that I no longer exist. Well, you are going to no longer exist. So if you're afraid of that, then you don't have an understanding of what liberation is. If you understood what it was, you wouldn't be afraid of no longer existing. Well, I still have to. I want to exist. I want to exist as God's devotee. I don't care. People can intellectually argue there's a higher state. Well, I don't care about the higher states. I just want to be God's devotee.
I remember a quote from Yogananda saying, someone asked him how many of the saints in Autobiography of a Yogi went all the way. And Yogananda said he thought not many because so many were content with the bliss of God communion. That made me think of that.
Yeah, liberation is actually extremely rare. Because once you leave the physical realm, you start to inhabit the astral realm, and you become free of the astral realm, and you inhabit the causal realm, which is the mental realm. You're face to face with the reality of God. It's like a thin veil, so you can experience everything of God, which God's nature is bliss. So you're completely, totally contented and knowledgeable at the same time. So why would there be any more than that? There's really no need to have anything more than that. You know that you're one with God. You know how beautiful the nature of God is. What's the need to become with it? You already know that you're one with it. So, myself as an individual, I don't have any desire for it. I don't think it's possible to have a desire for it. I think people that talk about liberation, they're just desiring, I don't want to come back. I don't want to have to reincarnate back and do this terrible life and drudgery of physical work. They don't understand what it is. But when Yogananda was asked that question, he said, "Sir, is your father liberated?" He said, "Certainly he must be." That's based on not understanding what liberation is. And Yogananda said, "No." He didn't hesitate. He said, "No." He said he was too attached to his family. And if we look at the autobiography of Yogi, his father's family was extremely important to him, as it is for most fathers. Their daughters, their sons, they want them to do well. They want them to have a good life, a successful life. You can be a devotee of Lahiri Mahasaya and meditate and practice Kriya Yoga and still be concerned about your family, but you're not going to have liberation because of that. You don't have the understanding of what your family is. You don't have the understanding of what God is. Obviously, your family only became your family. They weren't your family before you were married and before you were born. And you are going to leave the earth. And in his case, some of his children left the earth before he did. So what is the family, actually? And what about your neighbor's family? Don't you care about their family? Their sons, their daughters. So it's not based in truth, but it's a strong compulsion. So you think that Yogananda's father would be extremely advanced soul, but no, not necessarily. It was obviously a good soul. Right. To say that he was a master or liberated wouldn't necessarily be true at all.
Would you, the idea of the real work in our spiritual lives is to cultivate that willingness to let go little by little as we increase the capacity to let go of those bigger things like family and relationships, such as that.
This is all a conversation for somebody who doesn't have love. If I If I fell in love with somebody, I could have the mother, father, I could have my brothers and sisters. They could want me to stay in my hometown and work in the family business, and the whole family is real tight and together. And I meet somebody, I fall in love, and you don't care about any of that. You're willing. It's not that you're even giving up anything. You no longer want it. You only want one thing. And it's not because you've given. It's not because you made a decision to give them up. You have no other choice. You only love that one thing. That's what love is. And realization really is based in love. It isn't that we're making a Herculean effort to give up. If you're making a strong effort to give up, you should just go ahead and pursue your desires, do your sadhana, and pursue your desires. It's the best way to improve spiritually in life. If you have desires to work out, it's best to pursue them while doing sadhana. Don't try to renounce. I've never tried to renounce anything, but I've renounced everything, and I had a lot more to renounce than most people. Much more. It didn't require any effort on my part. I just very easily left everything without a second thought. That's because I knew what I wanted. So some people approach the spiritual path in that way. That it's a long, arduous, studious path of identifying what their problems are, identifying what their attachments are, and trying to overcome them, or trying to detach themselves from them. That's a negative approach. The positive approach, even if you have those, which almost everybody does, just put all your effort into your sadhana. So first thing in the morning, put all your effort, make that the priority for the day, your sadhana in the morning. And then every time there's an opportunity for pure satsang, attend that. Make that a priority. And you'll progress very rapidly. You could progress in self-realization in hours or months. It doesn't have to take years.
Yeah. I like that. Thank you. Increasing our capacity for love.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay, so initiation is tomorrow. Anybody who's been initiated anywhere by anybody is welcome to attend. I'm not going to teach anything revolutionary in regard to somebody else. It's all it's all the exact same in the essence. It's not any different. But the initiation that I'm going to give for the girl tomorrow is for her, but everybody else can attend just to get a more direct way of performing the techniques. In other words, why are you performing the techniques? What is the purpose of the technique? And then how to practice it in its essence, how to practice it spiritually, not so much the physical technique. The physical technique doesn't mean much at all. It's the spiritual, astral aspect of the technique that you do practice. It is a kriya. It is something that you practice, but you practice it astrally, not physically. Okay, Tat Sat. I'll see everybody Kamalingi. Kike?
Pranam Guruji.
Katam Samastaho. Absolute Milka Chafta. Every time you see Kata.
Love you too, Guruji.
Maybe to
Thank you.
That's it.